Welcome, everyone. Today's program is dedicated to our dear friend, Angela James. There is a folder over on the table. She was a wonderful contribution to our guild, and we all loved her. But this is our tribute to her, but we're not emphasizing that. We're doing what Angela would do and say, the show must go on. And that's what we're doing. Thank you.
Introduce me first. Introduce me first.
I'm sorry. And now I'd like to introduce Karen Daly, our hostess for today.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you all for being here, both in video land and in person. We have an excellent program today. I chose the theme cultural experiences. So it can go anywhere from a personal cultural experience or maybe a story from another country that you really love and you want to share. So we're going to hear a little of everything besides from our two wonderful poets that I have today. But we're going to start our program off with a teller that has only told one time before for us, but she has done more. Michelle Woods is a writer of fiction, and she says creative nonfiction. Her work has been published in the Blue Moon Literary and Art Review, and she has performed at the Stories on Stage and the Celebration of Art Storytelling Festival. She draws her inspiration from her free-range childhood, piqued my interest right away, and her random encounters with strangers. Her story today is Mom's New Friend. Mom's New Friend, Michelle Woods.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm so happy to be here and to have an opportunity to share with you. And I think my story is going to be in the personal experiences category. So when I was 13 years old, my mom married a man who was in the Air Force, and we moved from California to Okinawa, Japan. And this move was exciting, but it was also a little difficult. So the exciting part for me was that I got to live in a different country other than the United States for the first time. The only time I had been outside of the United States before then was we went to Tijuana once when we were visiting some friends in San Diego. So that was really great. The hard part for me was that I had to go to a new school, and I didn't know anyone at that school. Now, for my mom, the hard part was that she had to leave her entire life behind, all her life in California. She left her job behind and her friends behind, and she kind of had to start over again. And I think this made her feel a little lonely and a little sad. So she decided that in order to cheer herself up, we would start exploring Okinawa on our own, just her and me. So while my stepfather was at work, we'd hop in the car and we'd just start driving around the island. We didn't have a map. We didn't have an itinerary or any plans. We would just drive. And when we saw something interesting, Mom would stop the car, pull over, we'd hop out and we'd investigate. And this actually worked out really well because we got to see some cool places. We saw beaches, we went up to the mountains and we saw waterfalls and the mangrove forests. And we also spent a lot of time in Koza, which is the city that was right next to the Air Force Base that we lived on. And I was fascinated by Koza because it was so much different from the town I'd grown up in California, which was kind of suburban with lots of strip malls. Koza was a very dense city. There was a lot going on. There were taxis, there were people walking all the time. And there were some really just cool things to see in stores. So for instance, I saw my first Japanese graphic novel there, and I bought some tatami flip-flops. And there was also a pottery studio in Koza where artists made wonderful pottery. And I saw my first square vase at that studio, and it totally blew my mind. And after we, shop and kind of look at things, we would go to a restaurant and get something to eat, yakisoba, and also green tea with toasted brown rice in it. Huh. And I didn't know that you could put rice in tea, and I didn't know that it tasted good, but so that blew my mind too. It was actually very good. So to get to Koza, we'd have to go through the gate that was on the edge of the Air Force Base. So the gate was here, Koza City was there, and in between there was this long, narrow strip of land. And on that land, some of the people, the Okinawan people that lived in Koza, had established a community garden. And it was a beautiful garden. It was very abundant, and it was lush, and there were all kinds of vegetables and fruits there. Now, usually when we drove by the garden, no one was there. But one day we got lucky. We drove by, and Mom saw a man standing in the garden. So she pulled over, she got out of the car, and she went to the man, and he kind of looked up at her. He was a little surprised to see her, and he just went, back to what he was doing. He was harvesting sweet potatoes. And so Mom said, "Those sweet potatoes look magnificent. Can I buy some sweet potatoes from you?" And the man kind of looked at her a little strange, like, this is very random. And he said, "Okay, I will let you buy one sweet potato for $5. So $5 is a lot for one sweet potato, but Mom was game, and she said, okay. So she gave him $5, and he gave her a single sweet potato. So we're walking out of the garden, and we were just about to get into the car when he came running up, and he said, wait. And he had 4 more sweet potatoes. And so now Mom had 5 sweet potatoes. So we took them home, we cooked them, and they were delicious. About a week later, we're driving by the garden again, and Mom sees the man in the garden. So we pull over, we get out. Mom walks up to the man, and this time he's harvesting mustard greens. And Mom said, "Wow, those mustard greens look great. Can I buy a bunch of mustard greens off of you?" And the man, he looked up like he was a little annoyed. It's like, doesn't this lady know that I really don't want to sell my vegetables to her? But he said, okay, 1 bunch of mustard greens for $7. So obviously he's kind of trying to discourage her, right? But Mom does not take the hint. She gives him $7. He gives her 1 bunch of mustard greens. And we're turning to walk away, and he says, wait, 1 minute. So he goes to the other side of his garden, and he picks some squash. And so now my mom has the mustard greens and a few squash. So the next time we're driving by the garden, Mom sees the man working in his garden. She pulls over, and she walks up to him, and this time he's harvesting watermelon. And Mom says, "Wow, that watermelon looks so good. Can I buy a watermelon off of you?" And this time the man kind of gave her a little half smile, and he goes, "Okay, 1 watermelon, $15. So now nowadays, buying a watermelon for $15 is not that unusual, especially if it's organic, right? But back at that time, which was a few decades ago, that was absolutely crazy. So again, he's kind of trying to discourage her, Mom does not take the hint. She hands him $15. This time, before we could walk away, he says, "Wait 1 minute." So he disappears into the back of the garden. He comes back with a plastic bag. And inside the plastic bag, there's a cabbage, there's some turnips, and there's some mangoes. So Mom's got the watermelon in her hands. So the man gives the plastic bag to me. And Mom says, "Arigato," which is the only word she knows in Japanese, and it means thank you. So we leave the garden patch, and the man waves at us this time, and he smiles. And, eventually Mom found her way in Okinawa. She got a job on base working as a cashier in a store, and she made friends with some of the military wives on base. But she always continued to stop by the garden whenever she saw the man there. And I do believe that that man was the first friend that she made in Okinawa. Now, they did not know each other's names. They did not really see each other outside of the garden. And they didn't talk that much because, Mom couldn't speak Japanese. But despite all that, they were still friends. So, thank you.
All right. All right.
Thank you, Michelle, for that very interesting story. I really appreciated that. Well, now we're on for our first poet. Now, he's just not any poet. Dennis Hawk has written 2 books of poetry. I love his titles. The first one, The Secret Cup, Poems of Grief of Healing. And the second is Bringing Birds Through the Stone. Catches your interest right away. And now he's working on his 3rd book. And listen to this title, Follow the Lame Goat Home. Don't you just want to pick up that book to find out what his poems are all about? And Dennis says when he's not writing or revising his poems, he volunteers as an advocate and a resource counselor for the homeless at Sacramento Loaves and Fishes. Let's welcome Dennis Hawk. Dennis.
Right.
He's really working the supplies.
Thank you. Dennis, I was gonna hook you up with a microphone, but we're.
I understand. I got as much. Yeah, we'll forego that. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, thanks for inviting me back. I was here about a year ago, had a wonderful time, and I was here a year ago or so and had a great time. And I like the Storytellers Guild because I like stories and I like people to be so entertaining. And most of my poetry is kind of in the narrative vein, lyrical and narrative. So they tell stories too. Andy said I didn't have to stick to the theme. Okay, so I'll introduce you to another culture, the strange alien culture of my mind.
You can relate to that.
And you can also experience a little bit of tortoise culture. I have a lot of animals in my poetry. And this is basically an allegorical narrative poem with a little Latin American magical realism thrown into it. And it's called Into the Desert. I have to bring water because when I read, a lot of my poems are arid. They take place in deserts. And I get thirsty just reading them. Okay. Into the desert. I have followed this tortoise into wilderness, tracking his deliberate pilgrimage through cardon cactus and yucca trees. I lose him often among boulder fields, but learn to wait until my field glasses pick up the burnished rectangles of his helmeted back, swimming slowly across the sand. Then we continue into the hard, clean beauty of the desert. On the first night, his eyes speak to me in a dream. Why do you follow? The desert basin hunches in silence. Next day, we wander for hours. My tongue swells in my mouth like a large parched thumb, and I begin to hear tortoise talk. His words hang from serious spines as his armored body pushes on into the scrubbed landscape. What are you doing here? Where are you going? I put his questions into my pocket as I pass each cactus. On the second night, after I make camp, he draws near my fire and his legs splay onto the sand as he settles in. His shell glints in the collected stillness. The long contour of his dry mouth remains fixed as he speaks through his eyes again, as in the dream. We are near the final canyon, a sacred place. If you want to go in, you must prepare. The tortoise takes a length of twine from me and ties knots in it, one for each failure of love and courage in my life. He passes the twine through fire, and at each knot asks if I am sorry. All night we burn knots until the last one. I see your face in the fire, and the old confusions find me way out here beneath the moonless sky. I turn inward to think hard about my part, searching for lies beneath the stones of my thought. Then, yes, I am very sorry for this desertion, this one most of all. A coyote howls, and the tortoise's voice, lined with grief, half whispers, "Tomorrow you will go with me into the canyon." Closing my eyes to sleep, I hear the stones within chanting in the night's hollow. There are many more canyons to come, for the tortoise, like you, is deceived. Lots of people don't like that ending. They want closure, which you never get, right?
Yeah, that ending was excellent.
So from the desert to our own environment, which is becoming more desert-like all the time. Remember when people first started talking about global warming, 20, 25 years ago, one of the early harbingers of what's to come was the bark beetle disease. You saw it in the Tahoe Basin a lot. This is probably 25 years ago. Things were becoming more dry, and the pine trees could not produce the sap that prevented the bark beetles from getting underneath their bark and laying their eggs and killing the tree. So this is not surprisingly called bark beetles. Bark beetles. As the last snow and the rock bowls gave itself up under the sun's relentless questioning, and streams slowed to trickles, the woods grew discouraged. I saw this from my cabin window. Soon the forest turned blanket sepia, taupe granite above tree line, and the whole brown smear slowly sucked the blue out of the sky until it became the color of erasers. Then all birds of hue flew away, and only the drab remained, the wren, sparrow, and martin. Rasping lizards roamed everywhere, their reptilian eyes slits of hard yellow. I took up 24-hour watch, waiting for the ruby-throated hummingbird to return to the feeder I had nailed to the white pine outside my window. During my vigil, I rolled a green pebble under my tongue and listened for shimmering wings in the stillborn air. The old clock on the stone hearth ticked off the minutes as pine needles fluttered dryly to the ground. When I closed my eyes, I could hear the lizards scratching the rocks in the dusty riverbed. I could hear the beetles laying their eggs beneath the bark of the white pine. So I'd like to read a couple of poems from the manuscript I'm working on. One of them is in this new anthology that the SBC put out just a couple of months ago. Vicky's in it, Andy's in it, maybe others of you are in here. It's a lovely collection of poetry written by people in various SBC affiliated workshops. So this is called Letting Go. Letting go. For years, a door has stood closed before me without comment. It needs to be opened now. Within, stairs lead downward. They are neither steep nor shallow. The light is natural. There is no temperature. As I descend, the stairs keep unfolding underfoot. I don't count the steps, for it is not a question of depth, but of a compelling need to find out. My initial anxiety has vanished. Then I realize not even curiosity is traveling with me anymore. My head is empty of thought and image. I descend without agenda or anticipation. There is nothing else to it. And the last one I'll read is more liquid. And the arid desert or the dried up riverbed. I need to give you a little primer on physics first. Everybody ready? Yeah. These are perspectives from the various elevations of physics. Basic physics. You can never step into a river in the same place twice. Metaphysics. But you can. For any river is all rivers, and every spot in every river is the same spot. Astrophysics. Beyond even that, every point in the universe is the center of the universe. This is called Of Such Rivers. Excuse me. All discrete rivers are relative beings. All empty into the ocean of the absolute, from which they first came and last came and will come again. We are of such rivers, tumbling through cataracts, gliding past grassy banks, holding our breath over sudden waterfalls, spinning in gentle eddies. And so we make our way up, down, over and through, until we catch a sniff of salt in the air. We close our eyes then and float into the mystery of the deep and timeless, into the embrace from which we came and to which we now return.
Wow.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dennis, for those sharing those wonderful poems. Such a variety, from a tortoise to thoughts of a beautiful river. Well, now we're going to fold back over to the storytellers. And my next storyteller, I have to say, is a consummate storyteller. This young lady, whenever you need to fill in for a position, if someone doesn't show up in an event, you can always call on Joyce because she has a story that she can share. She can usually find a story regarding anything also. Today, she's going to share with us a legend, a folk legend that some of us may be familiar with or may not. And it's the legend of Molly Pritcher. Molly Pritcher, Joyce Orman.
We signed the declaration. We were going to war. War's messy. It's loud. Smoke. Bodies. Some living, some not living. The very first battle, Fort Washington, at the foot of Manhattan Island, which is now Manhattan Island, run by General George Washington. It was kind of a small group, a small formal group. There were many volunteers, but they used their own guns. They didn't have uniforms. One was artillery officer Coburn. Now his wife came with him to the war. Now, not many soldiers, artillery or not, would go now, but everybody was welcome because everybody had something they could do. Martha Coburn was a pitcher. She brought her own pitcher. And her job was to go back and get water and go to the front line and pour water for the gunners. Also, the big gunner, which was her husband on the cannon, keep everybody. But because they couldn't leave the line. She went back and forth through the smoke over the bodies, skirts flowing, sometimes stopping and ripping off to bind someone's wound before going on and delivering the water. Sometimes throwing a soldier on her back, on her way back to the water, dropping him off at the aid station. She found her husband unconscious from dehydration and exhaustion. And they were pulling his cannon out because they didn't have him to run. He was the head of the cannons crew. He was the gunner. No, you're not going to do that. And she grabbed the ramrod and she went to work. And she fought on that gun until George Washington said, all is lost. And he left a small group of men and he took the wounded and the big cannon and everybody headed north because the British were on the east, west, and south. And they did lose that battle. But when they got to a safe place, Washington was so impressed with her duty and her skill as a gunner that he made her an honorary non-commissioned officer. And from throughout the war, wherever she was saluted as Sergeant Molly. Now to the winner of Valley Forge. She wasn't there, Martha, but there was another gunner's wife there, William Hayes. This was Mary Hayes. Mary Hayes also went back, get water. She and Martha Washington treated the men. There wasn't much of a battle, but they had to have a defensive line. And Mary's husband was on the cannon. She again took water out to them, but mostly she attended the soldiers, the regular illnesses, but with frostbite because they had worn their boots out and they didn't have any new ones. So they used paper and wrapped cloth around their feet and their hands. But they still got walking in the snow. They still got frostbite. Many of them lost toes and fingers. But nothing outstanding there other than serving. But the next place, the Battle of Monmouth. William went. Mary went. She took her picture. And just as cold as Valley Forge was, Monmouth was hot, very hot. And those men on the front lines were not only exhausted, but they fell from humidity as well as wounds. They got dehydrated. She went, there was a nice cold spring this time. She would get water, go down the line, give everyone water. But she had an additional duty. The gun would get so hot between the sun and the firing that they couldn't touch it. They would burn their hands. So part of her water went to her husband's gun. And she worked at that a long time, many days, even weeks. But one time, oh, I'm sorry, she also tended soldiers, ripped her skirts, bound wounds, carried men on her back to safety to the aid station. One time, she came back to find her husband sprawled on the ground, mortally wounded. Again, they were going to take, because he was the gunner, they were going to take the cannon away. Mary said no. Grabbed the ramrod, rammed the gun, stood for the rest of the battle as a gunner in place of her husband. Also, Colonel George Washington honored her. Now, this time it turned out different. This was the first battle the revolutionaries won. It was the beginning of the end. It didn't end soon, but it did end. Now, Molly Pitcher. Molly Pitcher. But there's a strange thing here. As they interviewed the veterans after the Revolutionary War was over, there were stories of Molly Pitcher. I have a hard time with that word. Molly Pitcher everywhere. So it wasn't Martha or Mary, but there were hundreds of Molly Pitcher, because all of the veterans associated the wives who went, got water and distributed it, and they always carried their own pitchers, and they were either silver or pewter. Now, it's a long story, but there was actually an honor. It was called the Artillery Order of Molly Pitcher. The Order of Molly Pitcher recognizes those individuals who have voluntarily contributed in significant and meaningful ways to the improvement of the field artillery community. And that is the story of Molly Pitcher. Not one, but thousands all wrapped together. And they were very important, the Revolutionary War. Thank you.
Wow, I have never heard that complete story. Thank you, Joyce.
That's because I never told you.
But I remember in history reading about Molly Pitcher. I just never heard the whole story. So thank you. All righty. Well, the next gentleman we're going to hear is another fairly new storytelling to the Sacramento Storytellers Guild. John is now writing his memoir about his challenging childhood. His interest in storytelling, though, began late in life as he started sharing some childhood stories to other storytelling events and found out that his stories were really uncommon to most people. So John has worked since he was a kid, and I mean a kid, 9 years old. He worked with freight through college, in construction with a jackhammer, was a welder in the shipyards after college, and then he decided to go to law school. Woo! He had his own office in Sacramento for almost 20 years, and then decided, whoop, let's go into public education. And he retired as a teacher and an administrator at Elk Grove Unified School District. Wow. Now his story today, I can't wait to hear it. His story is about a 6-month backpacking trip that he and his wife took almost 50 years ago. And it's based on their experience and the language differences with the Quash, which are the first people of the Andes. These events transpired while going to Machu Picchu, as you saw the poster when you came in, where there were no paved roads, no hotels at the location, and it was considered incredibly remote. Let's welcome John Patterson. John.
All right.
That was funny. Thank you.
Okay, lady.
Good afternoon. Already. Good afternoon. So how would you communicate with beings you knew nothing about, that you saw using strange domesticated animals you'd never seen before? Webster's defines communication as the exchange of ideas or communion. So yes, back to Machu Picchu. We were in Cusco. We'd been in Latin America, a number of different countries. We're in Cusco, Peru, and our plan was to go to Machu Picchu. And we found out that there was three ways to get there. One was to hike what was known, probably still is known, as the old Inca Trail. The other was what they were already getting the tickets out for at the train booth for us, the tourist train on Sundays. Could get there in a little over an hour. A few hours later, it would bring you back to Cusco. We couldn't afford that. That was very, very expensive. It was like a couple weeks worth of money that we were living on, which was not very much money. We stayed in all the no-star hotels we could find. Those are some interesting stories too. But I'll lose myself very easily. Turns out 6 days a week, there was something called the peasant train, which cost 2 soles. And back at that time, there was 20 soles to the dollar. And it took a couple of hours. And it was an old train. It was a slow train. And it was totally filled, for the most part, with Quechua Indians, the first peoples of the Andes. At that time, all the information we came across and tried to find out was they had no written language. And it was very difficult to figure out how to interpret their language. And the strange animals they had domesticated were the llamas and alpacas. And we saw some of them in Cusco. They boarded the trains. We didn't see any llamas or alpacas on the train, but there was a number of chickens, a couple of goats, and a lot of people with very colorful and rugged, tough, used clothing. So we got on this old train and we started riding for about an hour. It goes up along by what is the Urubamba River, which is on the edge of the Amazon from the Brazilian side of the Andes. And we go along and the train's rattling along. It's all this gorgeous countryside. A lot of chatting and noise going on in the car. We're in the last car, 4 cars. We don't understand any of it at all. We don't see any other, what we were referring to as Anglos. And we're just sitting in the back talking. And all of a sudden the train stops and we look out the window. There's tall vegetation growing in the flat areas on both sides of the train, probably up to my shoulder. Don't see any paths, any road, any reason for the stop. And all of a sudden we see people walking through the vegetation off. And in the distance, we saw mountains. Don't know how the train knew to stop there, where they were going. Didn't make any sense, but that's what they did. So we rode for a while longer and we got to the bottom of where you go to Machu Picchu. Now, I don't know if you've been there or seen anything on videos about it, but now there's a little town there and there's a couple of hotels and some buses and shuttles that take people up the mountain. When we were there was one hut. It had a back wall, corrugated iron on top, nothing on the other 3 sides, and one old limo, they called it the limo, that would drive you up the switchback up to Machu Picchu. We couldn't afford that. So knowing the train goes in on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday and comes back on Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, we had our backpacks and sleeping bags, and we're going to make a night of it and go back to Cusco the next day. And we started hiking up the mountain, went to Machu Picchu, and I get carried away and talk about Machu Picchu, which is a wonderful, very interesting place. And then towards the end of the afternoon, we came back down the mountain and we were hungry. And in this little hut, there was one woman and we couldn't communicate, but she had a kettle she'd put on for boiling water. And for one sole, we got big round mugs of hot water with 2 green leaves in it. Now it started raining on the way down the hill, but it just looked beautiful. We saw wild orchids, all sorts of beautiful birds and wild flowers. We could hear the Urubamba River. It was a fascinating experience. And the more tea we drank, the more fascinating and beautiful everything looked. It's just incredible. And the colors in the jungle were just fabulous. And the river sounded so loud, but it was nice. And there was some plank beds on each side and it was raining. We each took a plank bed. I climbed up to the top one, as I recall, but depends on who you talk to. I might be wrong on that. Put our sleeping bags out, slept, got up the next morning. Turned out there was another couple there as well. Now, we didn't get any tea for breakfast. I was very disappointed, very, very disappointed. But anyway, the other couple turned out they were actually bilingual. They were from Germany. And so I was really impressed with that. You know, there's all sorts of, whenever I travel, I meet bilingual people all over the place. When I stay home, not so much. Anyway, we were down there and we're waiting for the train. Train comes along and we hear the whistle and it pulls up. There's 4 cars and it stops such that the back door of the last car is right where the 4 of us are standing. And like I said, it's the old train. So you open the door, you go up 3 stairs, it's level, and you walk down the aisle, and the same on the other side. So the train comes to a stop. The 4 of us go up to the train, walk up the stairs, go to open the door, big glass in the door. 4 Quechua gentlemen in their clothes, leaning on the door, pressing as hard as they can. And they just start laughing at us. And I take a step back and I say, okay, you got to help me, talking to the German dude. We go up and we push on the door. They're pushing, they're leaning down, the 4 of them. They're just laughing. Start to hear the train give one tug. I'm going, we jump off and they go, okay, come on, ignore my hands, listen up. They're watching me. I'm going to point around the train. I'll go through this again. You just step around the corner. And then when they think we've gone to the other side, I'm going to pop back up on the stair. We'll see if it works. You got it? Okay, pay attention. They're watching my hands. Okay, let's go. And I go, and we all run up the stairs. They're leaning on the door. We can't get in. I turn around. Nobody understands anything. The other 3 people walk around the corner. I step off. We hear a couple footsteps. I jump around, open the door. They come in behind me. these four guys look at me. And I just start laughing. They laugh too. So we're on the train. No place to sit. The other couple sat on the stairs looking out that window. We sat on the stairs looking out this window. We're going back to Cusco. Got my backpack. Everybody's got all their stuff. Great trip. I still wanted that other cup of tea, but didn't happen. Anyway, we go for about an hour. In the middle of nowhere, the train stops again. Four gentlemen come up and they're looking at us and they're very agitated. We get up. I move Linda back to the side a little bit and I look behind them. And here is a young lady, about 16, I'm guessing, with a colorful cloth across her front with a baby and a big brown burlap piece of cloth gathered together with a whole bunch of vegetables and different things in it. And I move aside and get off the train. The gentleman passed me her bag. I set it down, train whistle blows. She comes and she's trying to get down and they're helping her. And she's walking with the baby and trying to make that big step. And I help them down, help her down off the train. She turns around, I pick up the bags. Train whistle blows again and the train's starting to move. And I help her get situated and comfortable. I help her adjust the baby. She picks up the bag and turns around, starts to walk in the brush, but the train is moving. I think, well, I better move too. So I start to move and it's moving faster. And I've got my backpack on. I really wanted to have the tea now. I start moving even faster and I realized this isn't going to make it. I have to go even faster. And I jump up, put my left foot on the bottom rung, grab the vertical rail and swing around, hoping I can grab myself in. And two other arms grab my hand, which I needed because of my backpack, and pull me on board.
Wow.
So I had communion with another culture.
Wow, what a thrilling story. Thank you, John, for sharing. I'm just amazed with everybody's stories today. Well, now it's time for our second poet. This young lady wasn't quite sure what she got herself into when first of all, she's on the poetry board, aren't you? On the poetry, she's on the Poetry Center board. Oh, she's only an art. Anyway, she came and heard all about the Storytelling Guild. She came, she wanted to learn how to tell stories besides doing poems. And lo and behold, she's now a board member. And we are so lucky to have her. It's interesting how poets and stories really blend together. It's just another form of storytelling. But today she's stepping away from the storytelling and coming back to her roots as a poet. So let's welcome Vicki Carroll. Vicki.
Well, my first poem is going to be one of the first poems I wrote after being in poetry, coming to classes and stuff like that. It's about a year into learning these things, and I was at a band. I went to watch a band at Swabby's, and they were like playing all Tom Petty songs. I happened to bring my notebook, and that's, I love Tom Petty. So I was really lucky. I think this is like 2018, maybe in the summer. And, well, anyways, I brought my notebook and I just started writing this poem, If Poets Were Rock Stars. And I am reading this because it's kind of a salute to Angela. The first poets that I ever really knew about are in this poem, and she's one of them. So, if poets were rock stars, James Lee Job would be Tom Petty with the touch of Jerry Garcia. He takes everyday activities, elevates them in verse, transcends ordinary reality, a blessing, a prayer, a song. D.R. Wagner is David Bowie. He takes his readers far away to stars in space, magnificent timing, style, and grace. Gentle landing, feeling lighter too. Major Tom bids adieu. Carol Lynn is mistress of femininity and poetry. Which rock star is she? Stevie Nicks is who I see. Carol Lynn's poems tell stories of life, heart with loving intimacy of child, mother, and wife. Angela James. I see Angela as Tina Turner. She rocks and rolls with stories and poems. She is not shy, tells it as it is, as she's rolling down the river. Angela uses a full range of emotions, captures her audience, draws them into her notions. Now, as for me, I want to be Janis Joplin. Minus the drug shooting and pill popping. Free willin', fun loving, one of the guys kind of a poet. Nothing to lose, might as well. Not so far from heaven or hell. Did you just hear Janice laughing? So thank you for everything, Angela. I hope you're here with us. And then I have this poem called The Generations. I'm a 50s girl raised by a 30s Southern woman. My mother taught me to act like a lady at all times, as her mother taught her. Sit up straight, keep your legs crossed, say your prayers at meals and bedtime. Make your bed every morning, corners pulled tight and tucked diagonally. No using curse words, no smoking in public. My daughter is a 90s girl, raised by a Cali woman. I wonder what she thinks I taught her. Oh, I can't tell.
What?
I'm not on any camera, right?
You're on the.
Yeah, you're on.
Commuter.
Okay. Alright. Well, this one is kind of about, as I said, my mom was a Southern girl, and this is kind of about some of the habits that her mother had. It's called Thank God I'm a Heathen. Thinking about society, how it was when I was a girl. Thank goodness there were no specific religion my parents held on tight. My dad was a Lutheran, took classes and everything. My mom's mom was a holy roller. Talked in tongues, I never heard her. It was told around family gatherings. As a child, I sat near enough to hear what the grown-ups said. Apparently, my mama went to tents for church. The preacher preached, he got louder and louder. He cried, he begged. Then some in the congregation fell to the ground on knees and talked in tongues, a language only the chosen know. The preacher could interpret the message. He became excited, talking to God through the Holy Spirit, telling the group what my mama said. It was always a fearful message. There were oohs and ahs and praying, then singing rose in the air, and people felt saved. And my mama came out of her trance, knew nothing about her messages nor the preacher's sermon. That is what I heard. I was never a witness to her feat. It was a weird time in history, I guess. Just saying. I am glad I was a heathen. My parents never saddled us with anything but a prayer for eating and a prayer for bed. In Jesus' name, of course. The most important thing in my childhood, no wait, let me start again. the most important thing in my childhood, it was Barbie, bicycles, the Beatles, and the Monkees. In my teens, it was makeup, driver's license, a job to move out, and the Grateful Dead. In my 20s, it was get a better job, make more money, get a better roommate, and still the Grateful Dead. Realization hit me around 24. I need to go back to school to get a better job. In my 30s, it was graduating from ARC RN program, finally getting that better job, and still the Grateful Dead, also classical and jazz. In my 40s, it was marriage, a new baby, balancing career. I mostly played classical and smooth jazz to assist with breastfeeding in a calm atmosphere that first year. Each passing year had more learning and teaching until it was time for my baby to go to school. I could work more as a nurse. In my 50s, it was letting go of some of my motherly responsibilities and getting ready to retire. A lot of waiting up and sleepless nights. Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers captured my heart. In the 60s, it was getting to know myself again, finding communities that I enjoy, letting go of things I have outgrown. A stroke slowed me down a little bit. Tom Petty, Grateful Dead, Dirty Knobs, and Proxy Moon are my current favorite. Thankful and grateful. This one's kind of sad. Hope you're ready for it. Shame that binds. The feelings that hold us to others, the desperate times with no food, no shelter, just fear, no future. The child's view when the family falls apart through fights or other conflicts that cannot be fixed. Oh, the fear our friends will find out we are not important enough to keep a roof over our head. Where am I? Or food in the pantry. Then we go in the middle of the night to a relative. No notice, knock at their door. Their lights are out. 4 kids sniveling, red eyes, noses red, heads bowed. Mom wide-eyed, waiting for the door to be answered once again. Sorry, that was a hard one. Okay, last time. Ends. Burnt ends are delicious. The ends of a tri-tip, I love to eat them. The ends of bread, in my family, we call them heels. They have a lot of crust. I love to toast, butter, and bite into them. Split ends. I have a hairdresser that takes care of those. I am free of them. The end of a great book. I become sad when I'm almost finished. Will I find a new book as good? The end of a relationship. That is so hard, especially the hardest of all, the closeness, the laughter, and all the rest is behind me now. What a letdown. Life will go on. I am looking forward to what's next. I will let you know. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicky. Such a wonderful variety. I think that's what I love about poems, is it can take you from one realm to a next, just as of a turn of a page, where a story might have to read a while or have to get into the story, but with poems, they pull you in right away. Thank you, Vicky. Our next storyteller is another consummate storyteller. If you ever need someone just to fill in at the last minute, you call Ed. Ed has many, many stories he's told all over. What I especially, and I know he enjoys about Zoom, is it allows you to tell stories not only nationally in other states, but he has told internationally because of Zoom. How lucky are we to have him as one of our board members and also the chair of this year's Sacramento Valley Storytelling Festival that's going to be in March this year. So he may be telling you more about that at the end. But right now, he's going to tell us a story, and I'm not supposed to say anything more. I'm just supposed to say the title is The 75-Year-Old Secret. The 75-Year-Old Secret. Ed Lewis.
So this story developed from a 10,000-mile driving journey I took this summer all the way across the United States, meeting people, meeting with storytellers. And this story comes from the purpose of the trip. She was vivacious, playful. She was the life of the party. Children loved to listen to her tell stories. And everyone in this small dairy farming community in Minnesota called Austin loved to watch her glide across the dance floor like Ginger Rogers. These special attributes, though, provided her with a couple dilemmas. One of them was that she got pregnant by the mayor, who was married and had 2 children in 1942. Her son Ellard was born, and she never told anyone who the father was. There was a lot of speculation. The tractor salesman that came through with the Dear John tractors, the handsome ballroom dancer that danced with her every Saturday night at the VFW dance. Their gossipers just had a field day with it, but she never gave up who the father was. Her son, Ellard, lived with his grandparents like many kids did out on the dairy farm. And if you were a woman, a young woman, if she was 21, you would likely work in town and come home on the weekends, and that was what she did. In 1945, she noticed that her belly was growing a little bit. So she told everyone that she needed to go to Seattle to visit her uncle who had prostate cancer, and she was going to care for him, which she did for the next 7 months. And she came back and her brother was miraculously recovered, and she never said anything. There were some rumors about an illegitimate child, but they were just rumors, although they were true because that illegitimate child was me.
Really?
I was born in Seattle, and my biological mother made sure that I was adopted by a really great couple in a private ceremony at the doctor and nurse's office at a small house in a business that he owned. So I thanked her for that. That was a beautiful thing. About 4 years later, Mom, Eileen, got married. She married, I guess she had the 4-year affair, at least with the mayor, who is now a state legislator with 6 children. Somewhere along there, they ended that because in 1950, she got married to Elrod Huffman. He was a farm laborer, and in 52, she was pregnant with who would be my half sister, Vicky. Vicky never met her father because Elrod was a farm laborer. He had a cardboard business on the side. He was driving his truck out to the cardboard plant, and there was a gas can down on the floor, an empty one, and he lit a cigarette and it blew up the truck.
Oh.
And 2 hours later, he had burned to death. So Vicky never met her father either. She knew who he was, but a year later, Mom, Eileen, married Lloyd Kammerer, who was divorced, had 2 children that didn't want anything to do with him. And he took on raising Vicky, and then they had a boy in 60 who named Kevin. And then they had another girl named Davy a couple years after that. Of course, I didn't know any of this stuff. All I knew was that my parents had told me I was adopted at birth. My real parents, the ones who raised me. I knew I was adopted at birth, and they had always told me, they said, we adopted you because your mother couldn't care for you, and we wanted to provide you love and care, and it's what they did. Great parents, great upbringing. Thank them every day. Well, Ellard, my brother, who's now 81, he had a rough childhood. He dropped out of school in 8th grade. He started drinking at an early age. He got into a lot of trouble. He was a stock car racer. He was a mechanic. And at the age of 18, he and 3 buddies were drinking with their 4 girlfriends out in the country. And 2 of the guys said, hey, man, we're gonna go into town and get some more beer. So they got some beer. They came back, and they had a safe that they'd stolen from the lumber yard. And my brother was a good mechanic. He got that thing open, and they got $200 and 19 months in federal prison. His mother visited him up there, and he said, okay, tell me who my father is right now. All I'm going to tell you is that his name's Glenn. That was it. So I never had any interest trying to find out about any of these people, but about a year, I teach college, and some of my students go through ancestry.com to do their life history genealogy papers. And I've always been thinking about it. But a year ago, I did ancestry.com, and a friend of mine is a genealogist, and she came up with the father, the brother, the half sister, and a bunch of cousins. That's how I got in touch with them. We got a hold of the half brothers, who's 10 years younger than me, his wife. And she was skeptical about this, but once she figured out everything was okay, she said, oh, hey, here's your grandparents, here's pictures. She sent me everything, a family history tree back to 1850. And she said, your brother, though, he's probably not going to talk with you because you're from California, you're probably too liberal. And, he's a real trumper, and, and he doesn't want anything to do with the family anyway. But he said, I will share information with you, and I'd love to meet you. So anyway, I got all this information. I contacted my brother, this half sister, and that's why I arranged this trip this summer to go visit them. I spent a week with each of them. And of course, the tears, the joy, the 75-year secret. My brother Ellard was he said, I always wanted, brother. I just wished I would have known you. And he straightened out his life. He was the town drunk, and he ended up, after he was out of jail, getting married, and his wife divorced him after a couple of years and said, you straighten up and then we can get married again. And that did it for him. After a couple of years, he got remarried, had a great life, was a mechanic. He was in charge of all the typewriters for the school district in Wisconsin. And he had a good life and real good person. So we had a great week together. We found out, I decided not to go into politics and things with him, but we found out that we love to fish and go into backcountry and hike around. And that's what we did. And we were together. And his wife's a real joy. And met his family. So that was great. And I went to my half sister down in the town. She's in a rest home on a respirator and a few issues, but she can still get out. And she took me to Mom's gravesite. I got to thank Mom for giving me up to this great family, met the grandparents at their gravesite, saw the family home, learned all about the family history, a lot of details I don't want to get into at this point. But it turned out that my half sister Vicky, she was known as the Minnesota Fats of pool playing. At the age of 16, her and 3 girlfriends got sponsored by a bar to enter competitions, and they won a lot of them. It was just a women's pool. At the age of 18, they sponsored them to go to Vegas and said they were 21. And she started winning all these tournaments and entering into men's tournaments. I saw all her trophies. She was this great pool player. So I was a hippie. I was doing acid, doing everything, having a great time. And I met my husband playing pool. I beat him in a tournament. I was 1, he was 2. And we ended up getting married. And we have 2 kids, and I met them. They're really great kids. But she's the one who took me all around through all this. And she had lived with Mom the last 10 years of her life. She had the last 3 years, they were going to open a family childcare, but the last 3 years of her life, she got Alzheimer's and couldn't handle being around children. But she lived to 90. And the father, we've all decided that we're not going to bring anything up to the family, the kids, the parents have passed. We're not going to say anything to the kids about their father who had all these illegitimate children. So we've taken that off the table, as I think it should be. And when I reflect back on this experience, it really just added a new layer to my life.
Yeah.
More people that love and care about me and vice versa. And I have 4 adopted children. And I've always said to them, the more people that love you in your life and care about you, the better and more richer your life will be. So this journey for me really expanded upon those riches.
Oh.
Thank you.
Wow. Oh, how interesting. I want to see pictures, Ed. We're gonna have to come over and spend a day. I'll even make you lunch and we'll see pictures. Anyway, our last storyteller is what? And I'm going to share with you, I have been lucky enough, I have to tell you, I have been lucky enough that I have a son that loves to travel, has the money to travel, and doesn't mind if Mom comes along. So in 2015, my son said, open your birthday card, and there it was, a safari to Tanzania. I'm so excited. I couldn't believe it. I had to tell everybody. I was on the phone all evening telling everybody what my son was giving me. When you go on a safari, you're always thinking about the animals, right? You want to see the top 5. That's the lion, the elephant, the hippo, the rhino, and the cheetah. And we got to see all of them. Now, I do have to admit, the rhino was through binoculars, and all you could see was this horn on his head, but we saw a rhinoceros. But the animal life is just fantastic. And Tanzania, in the 2 national parks, has done wonderful in conserving for the animals. Not everybody has a chance to see the cheetah. And it was our last day. And he said, I think I have one more place we haven't gone. So you're in these open air Jeep-like things, you know, that have a top, but they're open, you know, critters can come. So anyway, off we go. And all of a sudden he stops and he said, there's a mother cheetah and a baby. So we said, what? You know, out come the binoculars. Oh, yes. So we sat there and we watched for half an hour, and she was teaching her babies how to hunt. There was a herd of gazelles going by, and we watched her just slowly creep up till she took the chase and she brought down a gazelle. We were just so excited. We couldn't believe it that we actually not only saw the cheetah, but we actually saw her hunt and bring down a gazelle with and her 2 babies. No longer have we done that, where you come around the corner and there's one out lounging in the middle of the road. Now you have to remember, there are really no roads. These are wide trails, paths, because they don't want to have any really human effects. So these guides know these paths, and I would have been lost, the first hour, because they're going this way and zipping back this way, and we're all within the same park, but we've been out for 6 hours. It's just so exciting. But the real treasure from this journey, and we didn't know that it was involved, is they took us to a Maasai tribe. And these wonderful people are so open to visitors. As soon as they saw us coming up, I forgot what he's called, but the chief, I guess he's the chieftain, came out to greet us and asked us if we wanted to see some of their things that they do. And the ladies were all over on the side, and they make jewelry. I got a little carried away buying jewelry for everybody, but they make jewelry. They trade their made jewelry for beads in, can't remember, Rwanda, that has a lot of beads. And so they make tricks back and forth in exchange. So they might get beads from there, they might get copper wiring from this, and they trade and they do that. But the Maasai women are the actual jewelry makers. So we got to sit and watch them do that. And he said, would you like to see some of the dances we do? And I said, of course, you've seen them on TV. It used to be the Wild World of Disney. Was it Disney used to put it on, the Wild World or the Worldwide Wonders? And they would show the Maasai tribes, the women they wear all those necklaces and everything, and they're dancing. Well, of course, come on up and dance. And I'm sitting there, my son says, you're making a fool of yourself. And I said, I don't care, I have so much fun. I'm sitting and dancing, and they're putting all this stuff on. It was just so much fun. And of course, I would embarrass myself. I embarrassed my son quite a few. But anyway, after sitting and talking, and they shared, they wanted to share their drink, their tea. It may have been their good tea, like John had, but they wanted to share, but we had been told not to drink anything, but we had our bottled water. So then he said, would you like to see our living quarters? Yes, I would. Now they're kind of like tents, but they're more like, have you ever seen the wigwams? The American Indian wigwam? That's more like they're at. Maybe 8 foot long by 4 feet wide. Yeah, 4 feet. Anyway, you go in, and right by the door is their little fire pit, because they cook indoors, which I was surprised, but the women do cook indoors, but that's why they have it by the door, so the smell and the smoke goes out. Then down on both sides, now he had his wife, and he had 4 children. There were 6 of them. He and his wife have this twin beds here, are big. They would be lost in a twin bed, but the husband and wife sleep in probably this matted area about 3 feet wide, maybe. And then the little ones are right behind them, and then the 2 older ones on the other side. And that's their living quarters. Very, very clean. She's always cleaning out. There were brooms made out of thatch, I think, from the wild reeds that grow along the area. But very, very clean, everything in its place. But the most gracious people. And when we left, we felt like we were special to them. They thanked us for coming and for watching them. They enjoyed showing us what they did, thanked us for being there. And I walked away with a whole different perspective of Africa. Yes, the safari and seeing all the animals was very exciting. And that 7 days I will never forget. But my favorite part of that journey was getting to meet the Maasai tribe of Tanzania. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of our program today. Now we're going to have Ed come up and tell us a little. I'm sure he knows all he knows about this, about the festival that we're doing in March. So Ed, come on up and share.
And also he's host next month.
Oh, I forgot. Ed is going to be our host next month. So when the notice goes out, he is asking for spooky or scary stories for the Halloween time. So that's the theme next month, and you will know.
What's the theme next month?
Is scary and spooky stories.
Scary stories.
For Halloween. Yes. So
All right.
See?
So,
Oh,
yeah, that's the theme,
Not
but
doing Zoom today?
remember that at all of our monthly events, you do not have to stick with the theme. The
Yes.
theme is a suggestion. So, like my story, I probably didn't fit the theme today, but it's something I'm working on. I want to
Hello.
develop. So you're wide open to do that at any of our events. And then on March 16th, we are putting on our second Sacramento Valley Storytelling Festival. We don't have our venue yet, but we're working on that. We've got our tellers lined up, though. We will have 2 high-level featured professional storytellers, and we will have an open mic. If you went to our last one, it's the same kind of format. We'll have an open mic. We will have some regional tellers that we want to put out for you. And
we're doing the first children's.
oh yeah, and we're going to do a children's concert in the morning. It'll be like, I think it's 11 to 12 or 11 to 12, and then the afternoon, I don't know the hours. Is it?
Starting at
Yeah, it's like 12:15 for the regular performance. So we know a lot of people that are going to bring their kids aren't going to be staying for the adult storytelling, but they might take their kids home and bring them back.
Festival.
So this is going to be for very young kids, preschool, early elementary children. So it's going to be a really good day. I know we're going to find a great venue. We had a good venue last time, and we're looking for something more affordable for us, and maybe even a better location. So if any of you have ideas for that, please let any of us know. And then I had passed out the flyer earlier about the Storytelling Festival next weekend, and the the featured tellers, they have told all over the world. They are unbelievable. And Tim Ernetta, who's doing a workshop, he is famous for his wit, his intellect, and he takes fairy tales and he fractures them. It is just, he's so amazing. And then Gloria Jones, is a local actress with Celebration Arts and part of our group. She's just unbelievable. And then we will have other regional people that are fantastic. We'll have 6 of our regional tellers. Some of you know them from here. And, yeah. And so try to do that. It's in Davis next week. It's if you come it's 2:15 to 5:30 for all the performance pieces. And that'll be with, and then if you want to do, and that costs $25. And if you want to come just for the workshop, then that's with Tim is 1 to 2 o'clock, and it's $15 to work with him. And I guarantee you, he will help you craft really amazing stories. And then beyond that, I'm also a member of the Storytelling Association of California, which is our California organization. I'm on the board, and one of the events that I produce with that is called genre storytelling. So every month, the 3rd Wednesday of the month, and it's on our website. Andrew's put together a good website with our Sacramento Storytellers Guild, so you can find out all this information. But I get 6 nominations from our 20 California story swap groups that are like this one. And then we pick 6 people, and we get a guest teller from usually from my travels in Boston or New Hampshire, and they come in, and like here, 10 minutes to tell a story. Andrew's always our technician for that. And so check out that on the website. It's from 7 to 8:30. If you're a member, it's free. If you're not, it's $5 to attend that. And that's strictly online. So that's Wednesday coming up, the 19th, or I think it's the 20th, whatever. It's next Wednesday. So, and there's lots of other cool things going on. There's Capital Storytelling. If you want to find out more about storytelling, one of their key people, John Albert, is going to be one of our performers at the Davis.
And tell them
Festival.
about in January, we're gonna have a workshop on.
Oh yeah, and in January, we are going to put on a workshop. Is it strictly going to be online, or I don't think
I think we're gonna try to get.
try it here.
Because it's puppets.
Yeah.
It's puppetry. So
Right.
right.
Yeah, so we're going to do a workshop on using puppets and with storytelling. And there's other events, and if you're interested, get involved with us. Become a member of our organization. Lots of benefits. We're going to be putting on all kinds of workshops. We're in the planning stage. We need board members. We've got 2 spots, 3 spots available to become board members. We have Karen, Joyce, Andrew, me, and Vicky, our board members. So if you're interested in that,
One thing, we have story clatches where you can, it's very informal. You can come and drop in and we do stories from ideas to polished, whatever you want to work on. We like to keep it small so everybody gets a chance to participate.
right. And then what's the other, the gathering, the Hill and Swap things? Like at Linda's house? What do you call it?
That's for
Hill and
members.
Valley.
That's for members.
Yeah, for members, right?
Yeah.
All right, lots of things coming up with us, and I love all the stories. I can't wait to talk to you. I hiked the old Inca Trail for 3 days to Machu Picchu, so I'm excited about hearing about your experience. Mark.
If I can, thank you all for coming. If you thought this is a free event. We do this every 3rd Saturday. We have a donation basket. If you want to donate, that's great. You don't have to. It's free. We're just glad that you're here. Thank you.
All right.
Gail?
Thanks for coming.
What's the theme of the next book?
Scary story.
Scary story.
Spooky stories, because I've had such a weird thing.
Halloween.
Oh, I'm gonna talk much about it because it's just come up with these things that
You did a great
Trying
job.
to change transparency. I'm the only one.
You might be able to find something.
I would see where you would switch that.
Did you ever figure out what that?
But